Thanks for tuning in to your daily dose of quick real estate updates, local housing trends, and market data, plus tips, tools, and strategies to help you buy, rent, or invest with confidence. You're now getting ready with RealiCare Reports, powered by the innovation team, Cami and Rex. Now go grab your favorite morning breakfast, coffee or tea, and let's enjoy today's episode.
Welcome to the deep dive. We've got quite a stack of sources today, all centered around one place, Launch Credit Union.
We're looking at their website, content, events, financial tips, security advice, even their cookie policy.
Right. And there's also a press release about a pretty significant award they received.
Exactly. So the mission today is really to sift through all this, pull out the most important bits, and give you a quick but solid understanding of what LaunchCU is doing, offering, and how they're being recognized.
Kind of the essential knowledge without needing to dig through everything yourself. Let's jump right in and maybe start with that recognition.
Sounds good. And yeah, this recognition is quite something. The press release kicks off with the news. Launch Credit Union was named to Newsweek's America's Best Regional Banks and Credit Unions list for 2025.
Okay, that's big news.
And what's really interesting is this isn't new for them. It's actually the second year in a row they've gotten this.
Oh, wow, back to back. That definitely says something. I was quite interested in how the source laid out the methodology, how Newsweek and their partner, Plan A Insights Group, actually figured this out. It's clearly not just like a simple vote.
No, absolutely not. It's pretty rigorous, actually. They started by examining basically all the regional banks and credit unions in the U.S.
Okay.
And the first cut was all about financial health. Are they profitable? What's their creditworthiness? Lending capacity? Are they stable long-term? Things like that.
So baseline is they have to be financially sound.
Exactly. And they kept the focus regional by only including institutions operating in fewer than 30 states.
Got it.
But here's where it gets really interesting and moves beyond just the numbers. A huge part of their analysis was customer experience. They used this massive independent survey over 71,000 U.S. residents.
71,000? That's a lot of people.
It is. And the survey was detailed too. 12 categories, 52 specific items. It generated, get this, over 845,000 reviews just from that survey alone.
Wow, that's incredible feedback.
And they didn't even stop there. They layered on top of that data pulled programmatically from over 1.9 million social media reviews.
Okay.
And an almost unbelievable 129 million App Store reviews from Apple and Google Play.
Whoa, so they're really scraping everything.
Pretty much. All that data went into their scoring model. And the final hurdle, only institutions ranking in the top half within their home state actually made the list.
So it's a combination of solid finances and really, really broad customer feedback.
Exactly. It shows how much customer satisfaction and service really matter now in judging a financial institution. It's not just a balance sheet anymore.
And LaunchCU specifically got a 5-star rating out of this. I saw that quote from their VP of Marketing, Kelly Haskins. It seemed to connect this big national thing back to their, local focus.
Yeah, she said something like, well, the national recognition is great. Their main goal hasn't changed. It's always been about being the best for their members locally. The quote specifically says, serving our members' needs with the highest level of services and compassion is just what we do every day. It sort of grounds that big award in their day-to-day work.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially given how much the award methodology leans on customer feedback. The source also gives a quick overview of LaunchCU itself, right? The basics.
It does. Established way back in 1963, they're a full-service credit union. Currently, 17 branches, all in Brevard and Volusia counties in Florida.
Okay, so very geographically focused.
Managing about $1.4 billion in assets, serving around 80,000 members.
And eligibility seems tied right to that area.
Yep. You need to live, work, worship, or go to school in Brevard, Volusia, Seminole, Orange, Flagler, or Osceola counties. That's pretty typical for a credit union wanting to maintain those strong community ties.
Makes sense.
The press release also mentions they're a CDFI, that's Community Development Financial Institution. Often means a focus on helping underserved parts of the community. And it lists their core values: integrity, respect, diversity, teamwork, service, and value.
So the award, the local focus, the values, it all seems to line up.
It does seem pretty consistent.
Okay, so that sets the stage with the institution and this major recognition. Let's maybe shift gears now from the national picture to more local practical stuff. The website sources talk about resources and events, right? especially around homeownership and financial wellness.
Yeah, this is where you see that local community engagement happening. There's a specific event highlighted, the Melbourne Babcock Homeowner Education Day.
Okay, when and where is that?
It's set for June 13th, 2025. Runs from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. right at their Melbourne Babcock branch on South Babcock Street.
And what's the idea behind it? Just education?
Pretty much. It's designed for, well, both current homeowners and people thinking about buying soon. The main goal is just to give folks a chance to get their questions answered directly.
Who's going to be there?
They're bringing in the key people you'd want to talk to: a launch mortgage specialist, one of their preferred realtors, and an insurance agent.
So kind of a one-stop shop for advice.
Exactly. A pretty practical setup.
And you can see that theme, that practical help in other website content too, like that article, Moving Soon, Avoid These Common and Costly Mistakes. It ties right in.
Definitely. And it's not just home stuff. The sources list quite a few financial wellness topics they cover. Things like 6 signs debt is taking over your life. That tells you they're providing resources for people maybe struggling with debt.
Right, addressing potential problems.
But also proactive stuff like the Financial Capability Month Challenge, 30 days to a better budget, and advice on how to start building an emergency fund, the fundamentals.
Building good habits.
Right. And it looks like they cover a pretty wide range of other financial topics too, based on the article titles. Things like student loans, grants, scholarships, what to do with your tax refund.
Comparing products.
Yeah, like certificates versus money markets or variable versus fixed rate credit cards. Even explaining options like quick cash as an alternative to payday loans and comparing AQLOCs and second mortgages.
So it really seems like they're aiming to be an information hub across a lot of different financial needs for their members.
Seems that way.
Okay, so we've got the recognition, the practical resources, but there's another really critical area that popped up a lot in these sources: security, and specifically defending against fraud.
Oh yeah, this is huge today. The sources definitely emphasize this. There are general pointers like tips on how you can be cyber aware and help us prevent financial fraud.
But they get specific too, right, about the kinds of threats.
They do. There's a general warning, beware of these evolving fraud methods, but then they call out specific tactics, like defend against smishing and spam.
Smishing, that's the text message phishing, right? Super common.
Incredibly common. And they're even talking about AI fraud, how to protect yourself, which shows they're trying to stay ahead of how scammers are using new tech.
That's good they're addressing that.
Yeah, and they use timely examples too. Warnings about travel scams or even like Valentine's Day scams. Scammers definitely latch on to current events.
So with all these warnings, what kind of concrete advice are they giving? What should you actually do?
Well, they offer actionable tips. Things like 8 tips for creating secure account passwords, basic stuff, but always needs reinforcing, and 6 tips for staying safe on social media, acknowledging risks beyond just direct banking.
Right.
But maybe the most visible, the most urgent advice is a specific fraud alert they highlighted.
Ah, yes. That one definitely stood out. Very direct.
Exactly. The clear warning is, if you get an unexpected text message claiming to be from LaunchCU, do not click any links in it.
That's classic smishing.
Precisely. And putting out that direct, simple warning is probably the most effective immediate protection they can offer. That's a key takeaway for anyone, really.
Absolutely crucial. And, speaking of the whole digital side of things, let's pivot to that cookie policy source. It sounds dry, maybe, but understanding it is pretty important for knowing how you're interacting with their website.
It really is. The policy does a decent job explaining what cookies actually are. Basically just small data files that get put on your computer or phone when you visit a website.
And why do they use them? What's the point?
Several reasons. Some are, essential. The website just wouldn't work right without them. They call those strictly necessary.
Okay.
Others help the site run more efficiently, gather data on how people are using the site, analytics, and importantly, track user interests to try and personalize the experience or show relevant stuff.
And the policy mentions different types of cookies.
Yeah. There are first-party cookies, which LaunchCU itself sets. Then there are third-party cookies. These are set by other companies, maybe for advertising, analytics, or adding features like embedded videos.
And those third-party ones are the ones that can follow you around online.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
They can recognize your device not just on Launch's site, but on other websites too.
Okay.
The policy also mentions other tech, like web beacons, sometimes called tracking pixels, or clear GIFs, tiny little graphics you don't see.
What do those do?
They help track things like page visits, or if an email was opened, or how well an ad campaign did. They often work hand in hand with cookies.
So this all seems linked to showing you targeted ads then.
Pretty much. The policy explains that third parties might use these tools on Launch's site to gather info about your browsing habits here and on other sites to try and show you ads they think you'll find relevant.
Does it collect personal info?
The policy states that this process itself doesn't grab personal details like your name or email unless you actively choose to provide that information somewhere.
Okay. So what if you're not comfortable with all that tracking? What control do you have according to the policy?
It mentions a few things. Usually when you first visit, there's that banner at the bottom. It should have a customize option.
Right.
You can typically go in there and choose which categories of cookies you accept. But it specifically says you can't reject the essential ones because, well, the site needs them.
Makes sense. Any other ways?
You can usually manage cookie settings in your web browser itself. You'd have to check the help section for your specific browser. The policy also points you towards industry opt-out sites like aboutads.info choices or youronlinechoices.com for targeted advertising.
And is there a catch to opting out of the non-essential ones?
Yeah, the policy does warn that if you decline certain cookies, some parts of the website might not work as well, or you might lose access to some features.
Good to know.
And finally, it just notes that they might update the policy now and then for legal reasons or if the tech changes. The last update mentioned was July 1st, 2024.
Okay. Wow, we've really covered a lot here. Everything from, that big Newsweek award driven by all that customer data, down to local events, those practical financial tips.
The really crucial fraud warnings.
And even the nuts and bolts of how their website uses cookies. It's quite a spectrum.
It really gives you a rounded view, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You see the external validation with the award focusing on financials and member experience. Then you see the internal stuff, the community events, the education.
And the protection piece.
And the vital focus on protecting members online. Both warning about threats and being transparent about their own site tech. Understanding all those different facets gives you a much richer picture of an institution like this.
It definitely does. And it sort of leaves us with an interesting thought, doesn't it? You have this strong emphasis on building trust through local service, the kind of thing that award recognizes and you see in those community events. How does that interact with the absolute necessity for each of us to be super vigilant against these increasingly tricky digital threats like AI fraud or smishing?
Yeah, it's a balance.
Right. Maybe consider how being informed about both sides, the services and support offered, and the risks and how to stay safe is what really empowers you to engage effectively and securely with your financial institution today.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of RealiCare Reports, where real estate meets real life. For more updates, tools, and insights that will help you buy, rent, or invest with confidence, be sure to follow, subscribe, stay connected, stay informed, and stay ready. Until next time.